Sorry, it's one of those mornings again. God only knows why the... Well, the world is going wrong, so I suppose a little glitch at Mirador Television in Lewes on the south coast, almost on the south coast of England, should be any different. But a good morning, if it is a good morning, to all our viewers. I hesitate to say that there's anything good about it, because we are in a state of war. Now, one of our loyal followers complains that that television, which I've been trying to catch up on what's happening in Ukraine, is on in the background. So I'm going to actually switch it off, because if it bothers people, it bothers people. So, there you are. We've got a lot of studio people here. Why I do it myself, I have no idea. Chortle. Anyway, hopefully Andrew Sloan will be along this morning. I actually haven't spoken to him during the week because it's been a funny week, but he's normally very faithful, very loyal. So hopefully he'll pop up at some stage. But anyway, we will carry on. And let's go through the headlines, because there's virtually only one thing that is in the headlines this morning, and having checked out the latest news, is, if anything, it's worse rather than changed. Is welcome to hell, says the Mirror, a warning from Ukraine. And already, according to the latest news, there have been incursions by Russian troops, not only into the Lugansk area, but and the Donetsk area, but also there have been missiles fired at Kiev. People are fleeing the city. There have been tanks reportedly rolling over the border, planes flying overhead with menacing stuff. It is all very unfortunate and very unhappy, but I don't suppose that really is that changes the headlines much. It's welcome to hell, says the Mirror. The Guardian, state of emergency in Ukraine as the US warns Putin ready to invade. Well, you know, it's all very well. All our leaders have been saying this for days. He's going to invade. And yes, there are some sanctions that have been put in place. But the critics say too little and too late, that we should have read the signs, as indeed our leaders said they had. They are all so convinced that the gift of the gab, particularly Macron of France, who should hang his head in shame as he actually enters into international affairs. He's buggered everything up ever since he started to interfere with things. And all for a matter of either his personal pride or vive la France. But the unfortunate thing is that he, like everybody else, was... it's all right, I can fix it with talk. Mr. Putin, President Putin, is not a man of talk. It is easy to tell. Having spent some considerable time in Russia, it is easy to read Putin. He is an open and shut case. Why all the people with all the millions and super tech and so on behind them couldn't reach that conclusion, I have no idea. And if they did, then they ignored it, and they are culpable, as they have been culpable in so many other things at the moment. Leadership is lacking just when we need it the most. And Putin knows that. He's no dummy. He's been reading what's happening in the West, and it's not just in this country, but across the European Union, where there are still plenty of people who are, plenty of countries who are teetering on the brink. Is right. We got the cash. We rejuvenated our countries. Now it's time to get out. And for that matter, in the United States, where really nothing changed from pre-Trump days. Nothing changed at all. So I'm really, I don't understand why we weren't better prepared and that we haven't got a better response. Even the biggest supporters of the government are saying our response with sanctions is lukewarm. And that the idea that we've actually targeted individuals thinking that they will sway President Putin. On the contrary, if they know anything about the Balkans, the Russias, and that part of the world, they will know very well that the negotiating stance between countries and Russia, particularly President Putin's Russia, is minimal. He will do what he will do, and that's the way that it is. And we've known that. We've known that sanctions don't work. We've known that this is a hard man. We've known that he is likely, if he says he's going to do something militarily, likely to follow through. And he's following through. And we're all saying, oh, dearie me, let's impose a few sanctions. But what I was going to say is in terms of the satellite countries, the Balkans and the Baltics and so on, is that the relationship between the oligarchs, the wealthy, and the politicians is a very, very stretched line. Generally speaking, what the politicians say is, if you promise not to use your money in politics, we'll give you a free hand, more or less, to make money any way that you want. And anybody who violates that gets drummed out. If anybody wants to look at a case history, look up on the web what happened to a man called Bogoljub Karic, who in Serbia owned banks, the television companies, the satellite companies. He owned everything, and he decided he would get into politics, and they finished him. He is now living, as far as we're aware, in northern Cyprus. He had to get out. He lost everything because he broke this unwritten rule between them. If you're an oligarch, don't tamper with the political side of things. So the fact that we've targeted some of the oligarchs is what we think that's going to achieve. I have no idea. Now, I know that from my time living and working in these various areas. Why the hell doesn't the Foreign Office know? And why aren't they advising our government that targeting individuals is unlikely to work? Very unlikely to work. We really got to have a much tougher response. And I suppose, really, if anything, those people who supported Boris have always seen him as a man of action, and he's turning into anything but. Biden has a very odd view of foreign affairs, and the EU is in such a dreadful state. It really is. Well, we're in a mess. We are in a mess. The Financial Times, Brussels hits Putin's inner circle as the US hardens invasion warning. Right, well, you harden the invasion warning. Hey, it's going to happen. We've known for a long time it's going to happen. What sort of nonsense is that? Hardening your warning. Let me tell you. And now let me tell you. And look, you see, I was right to tell you. What are you doing about it? Very little. Very little. And the whole thing about sanctions is, and there were several commentators who made the point very clearly yesterday, is it hurts home as much as it hurts abroad. Along with inflation, we can now expect a boom in energy prices, as if we hadn't had a boom already. We can expect scarcities of things like gas and oil. And because actually the sustainable energy, the clean air energy, it just won't be ready for decades yet, despite the fact that we've had various political parties, various groups and various governments swear to the contrary. It is simply not going to be ready. And it's a question of, do you want to go cold in the winter, or do you want to start to use fossil fuels again? I just do not understand why we hear these howls of protest, these howls of we can do it this way, when they know very well that they can't and it isn't. That's not leadership. I know that some of the decisions that have to be made are going to be very, very unpopular. Of course they are. And wow, what chattering classes to get hold of it is that they actually will make sure that everything that is done from now on is some peculiar aspect of what the government did 5 years ago, or their political philosophy or whatever. No, it isn't. It's brought on by circumstance, a circumstance we've known about, and a circumstance which we failed to respond to. And now we're at war, and the aggressor is just marching in. So far, despite protestations from the Ukrainian government, we'll fight to the last man, the only reports that are coming out so far that I've seen this morning are of diplomats and government officials fleeing Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, and that there have been rockets launched and explosions and firing and shooting. It is bothering. It is really bothering, and I don't know why. Yes, I do know why. Because we dither. We dither. And if this the soft underbelly of democracy is that we do things to get elected again, as opposed to doing things that are right and proper for the protection of the state, or for the advancement of the state, or for the general well-being of its populace, then think again. Every decision is made on the basis of, can we get elected next time? And 9 times out of 10, the people who will be swayed by those policies are the chattering classes, who don't bother to follow things on a day-to-day basis. We at Mirador have fought very hard throughout the pandemic to stay alive because we believed in the spark of freedom. But I'm rapidly coming to the conclusion that people in this country do not want freedom. They want to be led like lemmings, and they don't care who leads them. Oh, well, they get excited about, guess what? He had an iced cake for Christmas when the rest of us weren't allowed to. That's all. Yes, there may be a matter of principle there, and maybe even a matter of law. But when the Hun comes knocking at the gates, as it were, then we need rather more than people supporting a government over iced cake or not iced cake. We need somebody who is going to actually have a strategy for dealing with this. And targeting oligarchs is not it. I can tell you that right now. It is not going to work. And it's not working. Firepower is winning. Brute force is winning. And the diplomats and the people who thought that they could negotiate their way out of it haven't even started to negotiate. Their words have failed them. And we are left with, as one headline puts it, the possibility of the worst war since 1945. 1945, of course, being the date that the Second World War ended. Well, yes, it's very interesting that you see, I talk about freedom, and quite often the people who seem to be ready to pop into our inbox but not ready to talk are people from Eastern Europe, or at least where Cyrillic is the language. I don't know. Where are we? Where are we? Well, the Metro. Putin's gone full Tonto. And apparently our defense minister was in a briefing yesterday, overheard, to tell military chiefs this guy, meaning Putin, has gone full Tonto, meaning he's lost it, and he's gonna fight whenever or whatever is done. And it would appear that while everybody was, as the Jamaicans would say, or the West Indians would say, beating their guns, the West was beating its guns, Putin had already broadcast, had recorded and broadcast his "We are going to war" speech. So he'd made a decision 4 or 5 days ago. What happened to our intelligence community? What happened to 007? They didn't seem to do very well this time, despite the fact that we had a lot of hoopla about who was in charge of MI5 and MI6 and GCHQ, and what we were doing and what we could do and where the next war would be fought. It was going to be cyber. Well, it still could be. I'm not actually saying that it won't be. And I'm happy to say that as I'm ranting and raving here, the distaff side, the man who keeps me under control, has arrived. Good morning, Andrew.
Hello, you all right, Keith?
Oh, and there's Bella. Right, now there's that's where the source of wisdom comes from. Good morning, Bella. Hello, Bella.
Oh. Sit down, man.
This superstar. Right, Andrew. I've just been going through some of the news headlines, and I'll very quickly, because they're more or less all the same. Vlad's full Tonto in the Star. The same reaction to what the defense minister said. Daily Express, hell bent, no stopping Putin, and that's as close a headline accuracy as one can expect. The Eye has gone taken a different tack, because apparently the amount of tax, or the amount of repayment of student loans is going to be slowed down, which means that they will have to pay tax longer into their life. Well, that is something else I suppose we should pay attention to, but while we're at war, it's difficult to do so. And the Times goes the same way. Students set to shoulder 100,000, or I suppose 100 billion for degrees. And the Daily Telegraph. Sunak vows to slash tax burden. Well, what he said was, we're not a party of high taxes, and after all that's been said, we're going to lower taxes, but not just yet. Not just yet. So, some state that we're in, Andrew, some state that we're in. The Sun is the only one with light-heartedness. The crown jewels were stolen, and it turns out that they're the crown jewels that are I haven't actually seen it, but the series on Netflix called The Crown, and somebody has stolen the jewels from perhaps that's what we needed this morning. But I must say that it is bothering me enormously that the latest reports about an hour ago, where that already hostilities have broken out in and around Kiev, not just in the 2 breakaway regions of Ukraine, and also some newspapers have got their analysts going to say what it's going to mean to us, about how it's going to make the cost of living once again soar, as if it's not going up already. Now, that's the old fart's view of things. What about, I was going to say the young fart. You're not a young fart at all. You are a very articulate and perceptive young man. So let's hear what you think about the present situation in Ukraine and its effect on us.
Well, once again, we only hear that, we're sort of getting involved, aren't we? Once again, we're always the first one to run around, aren't we, with anything in the world? So it's a real worry, because last week, a lot of clients and myself as well stopped watching and listening to the news. because it's just not good for our mental health, you know. And I did put it on Monday, which was not good really. So yesterday I had to stop watching it again, and then obviously I woke up to some messages this morning as well about it, you know. And it's so I had the 8 o'clock news on, which was BBC Six Music, which you know I'm not a fan of anyway. But it's a real worry, isn't it? It's I don't know. On top of the last 2 years with COVID and sort of a couple of years, you know, I personally had before that with family. Um, it's just been, and then Brexit, obviously, and Trump. It's just adding so much anxiety, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see footage because you think, and you see people walking on the streets, and you see this old seaside sort of town in Ukraine. I bet was like gorgeous, you know, and it's just trash, and you just think the devastation, the worry that must be going through. It's how's this allowed to happen in this day and age? You know,
Yes.
I don't understand.
We are supposed to be living in. Can I make one or two suggestions? Because there are a couple of very close friends who are going to slit my throat for what I'm about to say now. But there has been a long-held belief that that because the EU has existed and we were naughty to come out of it because it's been peace in Europe. But in fact, the EU has had nothing to do with whether we've had peace in Europe or not. If there has been peace in Europe, it's been partly because of NATO rather than the EU. But the fact is that neither have kept peace in Europe. Okay, it's been a long time coming, but once you actually get, yes, okay, Tonto, you get a madman in charge of any state that likes to bristle with rockets and tanks and jet fighters and so on and so forth, you're in for a hiding.
Yeah. It's well, I don't know. First thing when they all run that table, I would have said to him is, "Why did you have pictures taken of you with no top on a horse? What's going on there?" Before we even start, because what's the news reports were saying, you know, Macron had a chat with him, and afterwards he was terrified, and somebody else had a chat, and you just think, right, is it just alpha male time? So I don't know. Wasn't there been, because I've been watching the news, but surely all the other world leaders should get together in the room. That should be happening now, shouldn't it?
One would thought so.
You know, going like as soon as this was happening this week, everyone's together. So Putin knows that everyone is basically in emergency meetings. You know,
Yeah. I would suspect that I mean, from my time in Moscow, from some of the things that Putin does in the background is he is a smart cookie. Yes, he tends to be KGB and they're blinkered thinking, the same as a lot of our own people are blinkered thinking. It narrows the focus, but he's still a pretty clever cookie. And I think probably what has been doing is he's been watching very, very carefully what's happening in this country and in the States. And he's chosen mid-term, right? There's only two more years to an election. So this is where the political parties start their run-in. There's only 2 more years now with Biden in the States, or perhaps 2.5 years. So they are likewise. So what politicians do in this run-in is they consistently tell porcupines. So he's undoubtedly decided what they'll do is that they will continue because it's election year or next to election year. They'll tell porcupines. And all I've got to do is to muddy the waters and get on with launching my troops over the border. I mean, that's partly the way I see it.
I mean, what's the thing as well you hear from various clients who work in certain high-brow fields, shall we say, of clubs and property and things like this in London, and they've been chatting away because they've had dealings with the super rich, you know, Russian and Middle Eastern people and Chinese who have all these properties in London and they're all empty. But, you know, that's the other thing, isn't it? There's a lot of someone did say the other day that obviously money laundering and things like this, and we're quite useful to Russia. So in that sense of it, Russia needs us. I don't know how true that is and stuff, but I guess not that far away, is it, Russia? But
No.
because I'm not watching the news, what about Merkel? Angela Merkel.
Well, of course, she is almost a busted flush now, isn't she? I mean, she's not the chancellor anymore. It was a funny situation. I think that it was almost a hung parliament. I've forgotten what they call it in Germany now. That's awful. But it was a split power base. So she actually has almost ridden off into the sunset. So apart from being the elder stateswoman, I doubt if she's got that much influence left. And always, if you recall, when we had a lib government in the
That went well.
exactly.
Go on,
They never work. Compromise is overwhelming, so nothing really gets done. And I would suspect that there are a number of EU country governments in that sort of state. Okay, they're not a member of the EU, but I worked in Bosnia and Herzegovina. How long ago now? Well, it was 6 or 7 years ago, I guess. And they couldn't even form a government. They were the longest, after an election, they were the country with the longest track record for not forming a government. They didn't have a government for about 18 months because they couldn't reach agreement in negotiating when it was a hung vote, as it were. So that sort of thing it creates. I was going to say sterility, which is not the right word, I suppose, but it creates an atmosphere of we don't dare do anything in case we actually lose any initiative. And that's exactly, probably, I think, happening at the moment. And Putin is loving it. Loving it.
Yeah, oh, God. Today should have been like all end of restrictions, isn't it? And the clocks are going forward. I know we've had biblical weather this week, but everyone's been loving it when it's slightly more sunny, and it's the days are getting slightly longer, and we're all going right. We're nearly through this. We're nearly through this. It's like the last mile's the hardest mile, and now all this is just descended and just thrown everyone's anxieties through the roof,
Yes. Well, cast your mind back 2 years. It was at this particular stage of the year we were told that, beware, the COVID restrictions are going to last another month.
I remember because we went away March the 4th to the 11th, and that was when that cruise ship thing had stopped. And when we came back, and they said, this was 2020, when 2 years ago, yeah. And they said, I spoke to a friend, and she said, apparently it could be 3 months we're locked down for. And I was like, no way, that's ridiculous. And I cannot believe, this is...
Yes.
Just at the long term...
We had John Kessels, who is a good critic of ours, and he pops in, and he says there's only one other first-past-the-post government in Europe, which is in Belarus. I'm not sure, John, that they're comparing us to the Belarusians with Lukashenko is a good comparison. But he said all the other proportional representations in Europe, most of them work. Well, don't say that to the Italians, for God's sake. And you have to be very careful with the Spanish as well. Proportional representation may have its supporters and it may have its virtues. But I don't think that that's any answer. And in fact, in many parts of the world where you've got proportional representation, it actually encourages a very swift change at the top in president, and also all sorts of corruption, because people are so busy making deals to keep in power. Sorry, John, you're not going to get me to change my view on that. But thanks for your comment. Very, very good. I'm delighted that you're in this morning.
It's
Yeah, right. I don't know. I don't think it's something we'll get into this morning, Andrew, about whether first past the post or proportional representation is the best form of government. But to be quite honest with you, at the moment, I would say that democracy itself is under review. I'm not absolutely sure that democracy is working.
you know, it's the thing of think it should be that how many votes, obviously, a certain person and a certain party then collectively gets, because it's attitudes, its opinions, but everybody is affected by different things in different ways, aren't they? So certain, conservative parties are good for certain things for people, but then might not be so good for other things. So one person might have, mixed views, but it just seems there's not much choice there anymore. And actually, to be fair to us all, there's so much going on, and there's so much push that social media, and there's everyone's got so much going on in their lives. How can people make absolute choices? Because it's all so confusing, isn't it? And we're all worried about other things. So having to then worry about and look through the rubbish to get the truth. Who's telling the truth? Who's not telling the truth? What's relevant? What's not relevant? What's the bigger picture? What affects me personally? Oh my God, we've all got so much going on. To then put that on our lives as well. It's. I'm not surprised people are just disillusioned with politics and things, because we're all worrying about how to pay the bills and get shopping and food and things,
Yeah,
and I know I said a couple of weeks ago about the cost of things, and one of the clients I bumped into said, me and you are okay, but people are on the breadline. And it's like, well, no, it's everyday things now. And now, a couple of weeks later, so many clients have been saying the same thing. They've really noticed it and making choices with things. So, and then they sort of it's all going to get a bit more expensive. But what do we do? There's only so much you can do, isn't it? I don't know.
Well, and then you're right. And I mean, what we try to do on this program, on this channel, whatever you want to call us, is to try and at least get people debating about it. But is Mr. Kessels, who, as I say, we're delighted that he pops in. But the fact is, I think that political parties are the worst thing that ever to happen. Now you would say, well, how else do they organise it? But what they've done is they made it a closed shop. If I want to run for the Conservative Party or on a Conservative ticket, or if I wanted to run on a Labour ticket for that matter, I can't, because I've got to be part of the little group that thinks a certain way. Now, if you just mentioned mental illness. You can read almost daily out beyond the headlines that we are going to have an epidemic of mental illness, that more and more people, because of what's happening at the moment, are getting under stress. Go to your local counsellor and try to engage them in talking about how we're handling mental illness here, because they'll either give you bafflegab or they won't talk about it, because it's not something that they think is going to win them an election. Now that's what political parties do, and people say, well, you need political parties. No, you don't. Actually, Vancouver, where I lived for 14, 15 years, and where everybody says they still want to go and live, a beautiful part of the world, was run by something called the Non-Partisan Association, and that was a loose group of individual aldermen. Who had no political they had political leanings, but they didn't actually form together to impose them upon governance of the city. And it was a very, very well governed city, very well governed. And actually, if you really want to look at a city that did all the right things, like green and looking after its elderly and so on and so forth, it did a very good job. The only thing that Canadians will not tolerate is what they call social housing. They bristle there. They don't believe in it. So there's a downside to everything.
I'm sure if there was an MP that was touted, so if I all of a sudden stood for Lewis East, whatever. And I would say what my main priority is people's mental well-being. And that's the central thing. And then what comes from that is the money worries, the housing worries, the family issues, the employment, the bigger picture, the community, the loneliness. So it all starts from that, but that's the core, actually, how we all coping in life and how we all day to day and function, how we getting up in the morning, how are we making it all work, and our worries. So it all starts from that, and it's what's affecting that. So on a personal basis, what's affecting you? So it is the worry about money, the cost, the food, the compromise, the pressure like to be green. So it starts from like your community, what else is happening, housing, the bigger things. Do I need to save? Can I afford to save? Pension, da 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 da. So it all starts from that, doesn't it? Because that's what affects us. So
But I
if
think
we
that
start,
your premise was if you stood as an independent, first of all, look at how many independents we've got. Actually, in Lewis, we're rather better than most. On the town council, I think we got about 4. On the district council, I think it's now down to 1. And what did our good electorate do? What did our good chattering classes do? The one really effective independent councillor, who is now mayor of Lewis, Stephen Catlin, was bumped out. Now that's how people. We really are lemmings. People don't look at things. They are almost told. Take a look to see which political party you want and put a cross against it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I used to do. Yeah,
The
just
establishment,
go.
the system is against any sort of a real representation.
But what I would want to do is not I don't want to stand at all, but I would do it
I wish you would.
just to provoke that conversation. So imagine if you're going out saying you're canvassing or you have a platform, you say, but you're dressing up and saying, "Oh, I'm blah 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 of Lewis East," but you say this is the core. So whatever's going on, it's your, mine, our mental well-being. So mental illness and mental health is bounded around, right? Mindfulness. It's mad terms, really. So there needs to be something else that just means, it's how we're all coping at the moment, day to day, how we get up, our general well-being, isn't it? How we face the world. So let's start with that. So I would say, what's affecting your, let's say, desire to get up in the morning? What's your worries? What's your concerns? And then you would sort of go, right, okay, you're worried about bills, you're worried about the costs, you're worried about housing, you're worried about the noise, you're worried about another housing estate being put on somewhere and bringing, cost of things. So you say, right, okay, that's affecting you, but it's affecting your well-being, how you cope day to day, what your quality of life is. So what are the things that are affecting me, our quality of life? Because that's all we've got is how we function in the world, isn't it? We're the only ones in our brain, in our minds. So our world is our world. Does that make sense? That sounds a bit Brighton. So that's what we deal with.
And
so if we did that, then we could address those issues that are affecting us in our world. And surely then that would help people's mental health, mental well-being, their place in the world. So rather than say this is our policies, this is a greedy Tory or this is a socialist Labour, it's not. It's like forget all that. What issues are affecting you personally? I don't know. Would then provoke conversation. So people would then say, well, actually, I'm really worried about this. I'm worried about that. And go, yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. So what can we do on a local level? And then obviously then take that to a parliamentary level and say, normal people, day to day, from all walks of life, are absolutely concerned there's going to be another mini Eton at Plumpton and all this other stuff, or the infrastructure of the roads, or the cost of the buses, or the car parks, or the speed, or the lack of decent choice for stuff. Everything is. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, you raised some important points, and I have to say that John Kessels is staying with us this morning and making various comments. I probably don't agree with most of what he's saying, but I'm delighted that he's there and that he's making those comments. But the fact of the matter is that most of the electorate don't give a damn. They really don't. John Kessels is here giving a point of view. We get other people that give a point of view, but they're in the minority. And I've argued for a long time, if you don't have local media, then you don't have freedom. And we don't have freedom. And yet people will ponce around and they'll go into the coffee shops and they natter on about whether they were at bridge last night or whether they're knitting for the newly born or whatever. All things of little consequence, and they don't care. To be quite honest with you, if we didn't have the backbone that we did, you and the group of people who believe very strongly in Mirador Television, what I would do is I would put strippers on each morning. And actually, we get a bigger viewership than we do at the moment.
I think that's brilliant. Brilliant. Is it the fact that people don't give a damn? I absolutely get what John's saying. That's 100%. But is it that we've all got so much going on? It's really hard, isn't it? So for us to have this conversation like this, and we put the world to rights, and we go da-da-da-da, but then you need someone else to go, okay, what can we do then on the tiniest level? And then somebody else might go, well, I could do this and I could do that. It all starts with that, doesn't it? But there's so much going on, isn't it? So
and we can't solve all problems. But what I do think is that if we identify something that attacks our freedoms, our basic freedoms, those are the things that we should go after. Now, during lockdown, we discovered, and actually most people don't care, the Data Protection Act is what it does is it protects the establishment, but actually it has got enough loose ends in it that the establishment are able to use it for their own ends. For instance, Lewes District Council are able to probe into not yours, you don't live in Lewes, but if you're a Lewes taxpayer, they're able to probe into your bank account to see whether you can actually afford to pay any outstanding council tax. That's frightening. That's horrific. And they do it because of the Data Protection Act, right? I have somebody that I've been trying to look after for 5 or 6 years, and who, in fairness, I suppose doesn't really want to be looked after because of mental health. But I'm not a relative. So I can't ask a question. I can't offer any advice because of the Data Protection Act. This is the most insidious piece of legislation that we've ever had. But everybody blithely just puts things up on their websites because of the Data Protection Act. Nobody's bothered to look into it. But when the establishment need to use it, bing, your freedom is gone. They don't give a damn about the Data Protection Act. Now, those are the sort of things I think that we should be getting on our soapbox about and saying, why are you able to get away with it when, in fact, what you do is you protect yourselves with this very piece of legislation. Oh, that's okay. What we'll do is we'll make an exception.
Talk about this. Noah Harari, the author, there's a book called Lost Connections, and it's about this. And it's about how there should be legislation to stop what social media can access and then use your data. Like I've been banging on about, for a few years, that we're the consumers. That's why it's all being used. Alexa, Amazon, you buy anything like this, you search the mics on the phone. We all agree to the terms and conditions, don't we? To look at certain things. So I think the genie's out of the bottle.
It is. And in fact, if I can just add, is I'm well known for my opposition to computers. Okay. Somebody will say, well, what the hell are you doing using computers to broadcast with, Keith? And in fact, the use of computers so that we can do this is a development which is much to be desired in the media world. But the fact of the matter is a computer is only as good as it being directed by man. And mankind, I'm sorry women, I'm going to use the word mankind, because it's much easier and it trips off the tongue better. Mankind has to use computers to help it have a better life, not let computers take over so that, for instance, credit card companies can call you in the middle of a Sunday service, church, and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about the fact that you're late with your payment. How late? Well, it was due yesterday, right? So it's due on a Saturday, and they're there on a Sunday, and that happens because the computer does it, and they will very shamefacedly say, "Oh, well, it's because of the computer." Well, what are you going to do about it? Oh, we can't touch the computer. Oh, it's sacrosanct. I would sack every chief executive of every major company that allows computers to run it instead of it running its company with the aid of computers. That's how strongly I feel about it, and it goes back to exactly what we were talking about. You know, I get angry about some of these things, and the fact that we're now with a war imminent, because actually you included, if I may say so, have never lived under war or the effects of war. I was only a little baby during the Second World War, but I lived, and in fact I've been doing some reminiscing because of the Jubilee about what it was like from 1945 to 1950, and from 1950 to 1955. I went in. There's a lovely chap called Fred who runs. I think it's Martin's paper.
Oh yeah,
lovely chap, Fred. Yeah. I've always got along with him, like him, and he's a good chap to talk to. But I was talking about the cost of things in the shop the other day. He said, "Well, it's only in this shop, you know." He said, "Head office bump the prices up." People have forgotten that up until about 1953 or 54, which wasn't that long ago, is that your ration was a bar of chocolate a week. A bar of chocolate a week. And I can remember particularly in that immediate post-war period, where I was given a square of chocolate a day.
Mm.
We've forgotten all those things. And that's why I think we're being so blasé about the enemy at the gates, as it were. But a lot of those things are going to kick in very quickly, because sanctions will kick back on us as much as it kicks at the Russians.
Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know how the youth are so used to, not just the youth now, is it? But people can order, you can even pint of milk. You go, "I'm out of milk." You go on an app, order it, 20 minutes, it's delivered. You don't even have to leave your house,
Yeah.
Stay at home and consume. So
it's interesting because having somebody like John Kessels following us this morning, agreeing or disagreeing with us, it doesn't matter. But what John says is, hopefully there'll be no rationing. And isn't that so strange? I have not heard anybody talk about rationing. But if things really become serious, and particularly with the energy crisis and so on, it wouldn't surprise me if that's something that won't actually start to come in front of the politicians. The various things have to be rationed.
Yeah.
And my God, will that be a shock to the buoyant society? The only good thing about it is that the finance companies, the financial companies, the banks and so on, with whom I have nothing but disdain, I'm afraid, is they'll suddenly find a hell of a shock too, because that will affect their operations if people are rationed from what they can buy, what they can't buy, what they can do with their money, and so on. Well done, John. That was a good one to bring up. Thank you. Right. Is there anything nice we can talk about?
I was going to say, before I go, let's talk about something nice. What should we talk about? What's positive? I'm hopefully going on holiday in just over a week's time, 2 weeks' time.
No, that's not good news. That is not good news.
I'm hoping, even though it feels like a distant memory because it's been cancelled and rebooked, I don't know how many times. Go to see lovely Stuart Lee, the comedian, at Brighton Dome on Sunday. So that would be good, because that would be quite right on and all that. So hopefully that would be quite entertaining. That's the thing. It's because I've said before, like me going to gigs and comedy, it's a big thing for me. So I've had to sort of look at not booking certain things because of the cost now.
But you've got a theatre background, haven't you?
Yeah, I worked in theatre for about 20 years, yeah. So I love it. I love that live experience. I love being in an audience. I went to see an act on Monday at the Comedia, Brighton's Comedia, which is, I just love Comedia. And it was packed and everyone was in such a good mood. It was an act from New York, hasn't been here for about 20 years. And it was just brilliant, it makes you feel so good. so we just have to find certain things to look forward to, don't we? Be positive and be nice to each other.
Now,
Like
how long are you away?
just a few days, really.
Yes, because I should tell you, we're not ready to unveil anything yet, but we've got some pretty exciting plans at Mirador. After having gone through rather a bad time during COVID, and my chief strategist is sitting next to me this morning, who comes up with. I've got lots of ideas. He tells me how to actually implement them. So you're going to be missed. So hurry back.
But we're going on so I've got a gig on the Tuesday night. So yeah, we're going on Wednesday, and we'll come back on the Monday, just the following Monday. It's a few days
It's
to
nice.
get
New
away.
York, you're going to, isn't it?
No, that's June. For my 50th, yeah, because I haven't been for 10 years. No, we're going to Sitges, which is by Barcelona in Spain. So it's a bit like Brighton North Lane, but in the sun, really.
Yes.
So,
No, I've actually, I think one of the things that we do is we actually put up little video clips to Getty Images from Mirador. Not frequently, but enough, because there are some things that are worth buying. And one of our correspondents lives in that town. So I've had reports about how nice it is, and you're a lucky man to be going.
Maybe I'll call you from Sitges.
Well, I think that would be a very good idea if you don't mind. Yes.
I could call you from my balcony.
Absolutely. I think it would be rather nice for us to get a view of what's going on elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, I'll be like Eva Peron on the balcony. So I better go because I've got one of my lovely clients who worked at Lewes Prison, who's my first one in this morning.
Right.
So that's always a good conversation and find out what's happening at the prison.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it's good.
Cool.
Good. Thank you for joining us. I know
Nice
that you
to
always
speak
have
to you.
to dash just a little. We'll be going off the air anyway. I haven't been into Lewes, believe it or not, living on the outskirts. I haven't been into Lewes all week. So today is a day that I'm coming in. So I may just stick my nose in through the door and say
lovely.
hello.
Yeah, lovely.
Okay.
All right, Keith.
Thanks, Andrew.
Adios.
Say, Bella will not come with you this morning, will she?
No, she's at home today.
Yes,
John's working from
I
home.
can see John's hand appearing through the door from time to time.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I guess he was going to look after Bella.
Yeah, just in for a walk. Yeah, brilliant.
All
right. Take care, Keith.
You too.
See you later.
Bye. Andrew Sloan of Grizzlies, and if you haven't been to Grizzlies, you don't know what you've missed. You should go down there. It is a social centre as well as a barber shop, and all sorts of really very, very interesting people go there. Now, the other thing, and I didn't do a rant this morning because I was really absolutely adamant that I was able to talk with the latest news that is available about the situation in Ukraine, which I think is a very dangerous one. But one of the things that I would like to talk about, and I will do either later today or as my rant tomorrow, is how we are having the English language stolen from us and twisted and turned. And the latest apparently is GCHQ, MI5, the spy center, who are telling their spies how they should use words and so on. And this has gone just too far. We have not only tortured and massacred the English language in the pursuit of some ideal that I don't understand, but also as I have no isms at all. Right? No isms, really. I tell you, I have no isms. I'm not anti-feminist, feminist. I'm not ethnically buggered. I am an emptier mind, if you like, of these things as possible. And yet I'm now being forced by these people to start to look at words which are making me think, am I? Do I? Shall I? It's crazy. And it's time that somebody took a stance. and I'm going to take a stance. Bring back freedom to the English language. Do not let these assholes, yes, I'm sorry, I'm that angry this morning, these idiots, do not allow them to tamper so much with our English that we are actually capturing people's minds, particularly young minds, and making them think in ways that they wouldn't think if they weren't forced to look at how they choose to use a word. It is rubbish, it is nonsense. And it is, we talk about slavery, we are enslaving the minds of our young, and for that matter, the minds of our old. And it's time that it stopped. I've had a good morning this morning, shouting and yelling, and thanks for John Kessels for joining us. Right, okay. We'll be back tomorrow morning. It's now 6:56. For weather, it's pretty rough outside. The breeze is going to stay. It's going to rain until about 4 o'clock this afternoon. We might get a little smidge of sun. Not a very, very pleasant day at all. But tomorrow we are promised a little bit of sunshine. But then again, what happens, of course, is we get towards the end of... thanks, John. John Kessel says, good show. And we need people like John Kessels to stir it up with us. Good. Thank you. We'll be back with more ranting and raving and yelling and shouting and screaming. Not to everybody's taste, but there they are. It's here, and it's here to stay. Toodles. Doodles, Fib. There we go. We can say, yes.